Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and happy Friday. This is Angry Taxpayer, and I'm your host, Donna Smirniotopoulos. I decided to do something different today and take the photography outside because we live in a beautiful city and we should appreciate the beauty around us. I can think of no better way to showcase that beauty than to invite you to enjoy the view of the South Norwalk Boat Club and the Norwalk Harbor behind me. And I should be out here more instead of inside my house. Also, somebody complained to me that I was too negative. So actually a dear friend. So I appreciate the advice. And nonetheless, I am going to get into some, more dense terrain here, and hopefully you can enjoy the view. Yesterday, Thursday, many of you may be aware that Senate Majority Leader Bob Duff participated in a vigil for those lives that have recently been lost due to gun violence. And he partnered with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. So I have complete compassion and empathy for the victims of gun violence, for the survivors. There's no lack of empathy. I think that, unfortunately, when you give yourself a name like, again, Moms Against Violence or whatever, the assumption may be that people who are on the other side are for violence or they're for gun violence. And no one is in favor of mass shootings. No one is in favor of random violence, the kind we see in the inner city, of the kind we see out in the middle of nowhere. Of what we saw in El Paso at a Walmart, of what happened in a popular nightlife destination in Dayton, Ohio. So no one supports that. We may differ in our opinions as to how best to address the issue of gun violence and mass shootings in particular. So mass shootings account for a very small fraction of total gun deaths. Most gun deaths, the vast majority, are suicides, which is really unfortunate. And most of those victims are older white men. In 2014, that's the last year for which I have good statistics, there were about 33,000 gun deaths. So a tiny, tiny fraction were mass shootings. About 12,000 were homicides, and most of those victims were young African American males. So males tend to be the victims. They tend to be also the shooters. We're not sure why that is. And I don't think toxic masculinity is a very helpful explanation. Nonetheless, Senator Duff partnered with Moms Demand Action, and I was critical of this event, not because I don't think we should be mourning, but because I think that if Bob Duff wanted to help the community, he has many ways in which to do this. He could bring more money back for our schools, for example. He could bring more money back for our tax dollars. Right now, he brings back about 9 cents for every dollar we send to Hartford. So we don't have a Boys and Girls Club in Norwalk. We don't have a YMCA. We don't have the kinds of things that young people need to give their lives a sense of purpose and meaning. And I would rather Senator Duff use his energies in that way. And to me, based on what he did after the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting, and there was a subsequent gun march in Norwalk, I felt that he would exploit it for political gain and to score cheap points, and that's exactly what he did. One of the photographs from that march was featured in his trifold, full-color, glossy flyer for his re-election bid last November. So, we shouldn't be totally cynical, but we shouldn't be naive either. So I want to talk a little bit now about Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. This was a grassroots organization, and it was founded shortly after the Sandy Hook massacre. And what happened subsequent, there was already an organization, and it was Mayors Against Illegal Guns. that organization, Mayors Against Illegal Guns, was founded by former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg. Michael Bloomberg has contributed millions and millions and millions of dollars to the organization. The parent organization now, so both of those, both Moms Demand Action and Mayors Against Illegal Guns, have been folded into a new entity called Everytown for Gun Safety, and they have an action fund, and then they have a charitable fund. They've been making a lot of money. Now, some of it comes from grassroots contributions, and some of it comes from generous donors like Mayor Bloomberg. I printed out their 2017 return, and you can see here what their contributions look like. So it's a lot. 30 million, 50 million, depending on the year you're looking at. Now, an interesting thing about, as I reviewed this return, is they are required, because they engage in lobbying, they are required to fill out a 501H Schedule C. And what I found in looking at the 501H Schedule C is that they are putting a lot of money into lobbying efforts also. Some mayors who were part of the original parent organization, which was Mayors Against Illegal Guns, some of those mayors have left because they felt that the organization was specifically geared not towards illegal guns and eliminating illegal guns, but that there was an agenda to eliminate guns entirely. And full disclosure, I am not a member of the NRA. I've never owned a gun. The only time I think about purchasing a firearm is when people start to talk about taking them away, because I think fundamentally it's a bad idea to have all the weapons belong to the police and the military. This is what happens in military juntas, in fact. The people are disarmed. So I don't think that's a good place for U.S. citizens to be. But I don't own a firearm. I am a fan of Mayor Bloomberg. But I think it's important that we know where the money is coming from for this organization. And the more I looked into it, the more it looked like a Democratic PAC. I'm a registered Democrat. So does that mean, though, by extension, that I have to support every political and lobbying effort made by my fellow Democrats? I do not. And you do not either. And really the point here isn't whether or not we object to gun violence. We all should object to gun violence. Whether we believe we need more common sense measures like universal background checks, I think that sounds like a very sensible measure. But we should be fully aware of the organizations and the politicians who wrap themselves around these organizations and where their money comes from. I found multiple contributions with no identity listed for a donor that were over $1 million. So it's troublesome, it's problematic. I know the NRA raises a lot more money, more like $400 million to Everytown's 40 or 50 million. But I also know that the NRA dedicates most of their money towards gun safety and gun education and so forth. Obviously, they engage in lobbying too. But let's not kid ourselves that there are good guys and bad guys, and the good guys are all on one side and the bad guys are all on the other side. I don't think that kind of thinking is helpful. I don't think the rhetoric is helpful. And bottom line, I would like for the state senator, Senate Majority Leader Bob Duff, to do more to make this a stronger community. And, politically motivated photo ops are not the best way to do it, in my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. Certainly, I expect to hear a lot of objections to my analysis of Moms Demand Action. And I'm sure that they're all very, very good people. But it isn't as simple as we're led to believe. This is not a simple black and white issue. And I urge you to dig deeper. And I hope you have a great weekend. It looks like it's going to be a beauty. I look forward to seeing you all in a couple days. Bye bye.